Hi, I'm Rob Vanstone, and welcome to what I believe to be the 22nd, 23rd, higher than 21, 24th edition, perhaps, of the Leader Post Rider Rumblings podcast. Murray, what number are we at?
I'm going to go with 24.
Okay.
So if I'm wrong, it's your fault.
24 for Tom Campana.
Yeah.
So, lots of things to discuss this week. This is Murray McCormick, by the way.
Hi.
I'm Rob Vanstone, I think. I did not see that one coming. You saw it in person. Was it any easier to comprehend in person than it was on television? Because they played so well. 1 week after, they being the Saskatchewan-roughriders, 1 week after playing so dismally in Winnipeg, 2 road trips, 2 entirely different performances. There's no way I saw that coming. And I don't know how many did.
I was trying to think of how many times I've seen the Riders win in Calgary over my 10-year career covering it.
I like tenure.
10-year tenure covering the Rough Riders, and I had something else to do and I gave up. But I'm still amazed at that. Like, Zach Collaros was an entirely different quarterback than he was. From that first pass to Shaq Evans, it went, he's on mark, he's on point, he's on mark. To the rest of the defense playing well, I didn't see it coming. I thought Calgary was too good of a team to lose 2 in a row at home, and then to lose like that. The Riders dominated them, and I think you did a good job in your column today, pointing out.
Can you repeat that, please?
Yeah, I'm having a tough time with my lips. Maybe I don't know what's going on.
No, I wanted to hear the compliment again.
Oh, okay, yeah, you did a good job in your column today.
I did a good job in my column today.
But I think, and they give you. I was reading a lot of stuff. A lot of people pointed out how well the Riders played, and they deserve the kudos for that. Absolutely, Calgary's a tough place to go in and play. I don't know why. They're all so tough, but
they're just good most of the time.
And they just weren't that. They came back. The second half there was the defense stubbed its toe for sure that they didn't play as well. But they're still getting used to things. But boy, what an offensive display! The offensive line, oh no, here goes 3 sacks. Are going to be just one of these games, and then they buckle down. And
after that third sack, it was like you're not getting near Zach Collaros.
And I'm going to say
Collaros.
Mike Adams' pick in the end zone was like that's the TSN turning point, the Leader Post turning point, and we may look back as a season turning point if we can have a turning point this late in the season,
especially if they finish first.
Yes,
that's a first place play.
And
if they make that,
and what a pick by him! It went right through Eric Rogers' arms and just even didn't have any room for air. It's Mike Adam.
It's Adam and it's Collaros.
Collaros?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, jeez.
Ariel Zur of CGME asked Zach Collaros specifically to pronounce the surname, and he specified that it isn't Collaros, it's Collaros.
Well, I don't know if I can change that. Pretty hard to get this old dog to find a new trick. I'm just getting used to being.
You're still working on Jovan Johnson.
That's true too. Yeah, that's a tough one. Whew.
Sorry.
Anyway, that's a good thought to keep in mind.
Well, that's our show for this week.
Yeah, that's where we're going to go. I'm still doing how to spell practice and practice.
Yeah, I hate that one.
That's enough. But what were we talking about?
Football. Zach Collaros. Before
Zach
I totally
Collaros.
Took us in a different. That's the best game I've ever seen a quarterback play without throwing a touchdown pass.
I know.
That was outstanding.
So can we still scratch our heads over why they can't score a touchdown pass? Where they had great drives. They had 15 play drives, 11 play drives, 9 play drives, a 4 play drive. They had just really that good. And they had some other stuff, but
only
they had
2
sustained drives, sustained success, if you can use that word on here.
You need a trademark beside that little R.
They were more than moderately successful after getting their butts handed to them by the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. So what does that say about the West Division now? If you had to do the rankings, would you drop Calgary to 3rd the way things are right now if you're looking at the West Division based on rankings and power points and all those
Winnipeg's playing very good football, and they're 1 week and a fraction removed from beating a Saskatchewan team that just won in Calgary. The same team that just lost in Winnipeg. So how do you figure it? But the Riders have won a season series against Calgary for the first time since 2009. Calgary's lost four games this season. 2 of them have been to the Rough Riders. So how do you not, based upon just the way the teams are playing today, how do you not put the Riders on top of the list as far as teams that are playing well?
Well, 1B or 1A is BC. That game on Friday night was
is going to be, yeah.
That third quarter is the third quarter we're going to go back on. Holy smokes. I was at a local Calgary establishment watching that, these guys were chatting. I'm trying to watch his third quarter and watch Travis Luley just dissect them, and DeVier Posey having a big game and going, why? This is not an Eskimos team. That's not the evil Empire anymore. They're kind of like mediocre Empire right now, and just
that's a mess.
That's a mess, and it's the whole playoff thing is a mess, which is kind of fun. Like You and I are both in good moods, which is a pretty rare thing because usually you're usually half asleep and I'm always cheerful. But both, because when the Riders win and they win like that, it's just a better city to be in, isn't it? And
especially this time of year, pardon my itchy ear. This time of year, when the team's doing well, people get excited. There's a buzz. You feel like there's more of an appetite for all things football, and that includes what we do. So I don't think it's detrimental to our interest for them to do well. But suddenly people are asking,
exactly,
how are they going to do? How far are they going to go? Are they going to get first? Are they going to get a home playoff game? The debate as far as the hierarchy atop the power rankings is certainly includes the Roughriders, whether you put them or Calgary or Winnipeg or BC in that up, whatever order you put them in that upper echelon. It's and look how that's flipped. That script has flipped. Don't ever try to say that.
Flip script?
Look how that's changed in a week.
Well, how about a week? How about since last Tuesday?
Yeah.
Or Tuesday. Imagine if they gone in there and lost without Charleston Hughes, and what this week would have been like. But another, because it kind of doesn't gloss over what would happen with Charles Hughes and being deactivated. There's another word, but if they had lost, it'd be the conversation again, I think. And being a fine journalist that I am, I kind of forgot to ask him about it on Saturday night. I'm sorry about that, but it wasn't the story.
No,
it was more the
ship sailed. I didn't mind it. I suspended you for 3 days because of it. You just found out, but aside from that,
I'd rather be deactivated.
You're deactivated.
All right, good, because I need the week off. I just want to say a lot of people have asked me about Charleston Hughes. Still, though, I still get talked a lot about that, and I think the Riders did the right thing. But one guy I was talking to today made a very good point. You're asking coaches whose jobs are on the line to be ethical and morally right. And that's a pretty hard thing to do. And I'm not saying it's wrong, but this is their livelihood. And when you're asking Chris Jones, and Chris Jones is not going to say that, but his job is on the line and he wants to have the very best players in there. What society might think is he was very cognizant of, but it's a big ask for guys to do that. And you know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, it's a tough. It's a dilemma for a coach from two standpoints. One, you're telling him to win, but you're telling him that might be a good idea to sit someone who's leading the league in quarterback sacks. Yeah. So that's a contradictory.
And there's no policy in place. And
there's no policy.
As far as there's no policy in place, hang on. There's a societal policy.
And it's just a charge and an allegation at this stage, too.
But it's still a charge and allegation, but there's society involved. I don't know what would happen to me if I got caught with impaired driving and failing to provide a breast. I don't know what the leader post would do to me. I hope I never, ever have to find out. And I would think the embarrassment, and I think that was a word that Charleston Hughes that I found of a lot of the things he said was embarrassed. And I think if anybody's been ever caught for DUI with that stuff, I think the embarrassment of telling your wife, telling your kids, telling your coworkers, and your names all over the paper. And I think that's a really hard thing. So I talked to some of the players and I talked about lessons learned. And they didn't really want to talk about the actual situation. They wanted to talk about the general feeling of, hey, if you drink and drive, there's options out there, folks. There's first choice. There's other things. If you're pulled over on the side of the road and you're non-responsive, I think you've already gotten yourself in trouble by then. So kudos for the Riders for doing the right thing. Kudos to Chris Jones standing up on Friday and answering every question. I think I was impressed. He was on point. He knew what he was going to say. We can argue about whether saying that this, football should be the head of all this stuff, because I think society issues do take the part of football, and that was a pretty big issue. I don't agree with what he said, but
he said it was a sad state of affairs that this is being discussed. Okay,
sorry.
It's the day before a game in Calgary, a place where Charleston Hughes had starred for the better part of 10 seasons.
Yeah.
Charleston Hughes was going to be a story even if this hadn't happened. Charleston Hughes is playing his first game in Calgary, so people are going to be talking and writing about him anyway. Yeah. The circumstances being what they are, the timing being what it is, the fact that it took 2 days to get from first discussing the situation publicly to making the decision, the fact that there was some delay there contributed to that, because that story could have blown over on a Wednesday or Thursday. So it's somewhat naive to say this shouldn't be a big deal on that day, especially when that's the same day that the team puts out a statement.
Exactly.
The team itself puts out a statement.
And I thought, so
that the team set the agenda as much as anything.
I think that's shooting the messenger more than it is the messages out there. In the same token, I think their team stood up and they made that right call, and I still think they made the right call. I think it's somehow you're in that position, you're in the position of a celebrity, and that happens, there has to be consequences. There has to be a consequence.
And you look at, I thought of it from a football standpoint, even if you extract the legalities from the situation. Chris Jones said earlier in the year that he's going to rest Charleston Hughes, rest some of the older players on occasion, and they've done that with the defensive backs, for example. Yep. Now, his production, Charleston Hughes' production had been down in recent weeks. He's turns 35 in a couple of months. So here's a chance to, albeit against a very good opponent, here's a chance to give him that rest. Now, suppose that the matter is heard in the courts at the end of October, and the Riders had waited until then to issue any discipline on that.
Yeah, it would have been a playoff game.
Then you're talking about sitting out playoff games if it's resolved in a manner that has some finality. So instead of facing the possibility of him not playing in the playoffs, if you're going to issue the sanctions, the discipline, then they've got it out of the way. If the Riders were to come out this week and say Charleston Hughes is playing against BC, I don't think there'll be any objections. They've already handled it. It's done, and the bonus is they won without him.
That's a good point.
That one is they've just taken care of that, and it's not going to be in the ether. And people aren't going to be asking this week is Charleston Hughes going to play. People aren't going to be asking going into the playoffs, what about Charleston Hughes? They've removed the entire distraction factor by dealing with it immediately.
Not the biggest thing,
and they won. There's no downside to any of this.
The biggest thing a coach can do when a player has had that kind of thing is take away the opportunity to play. Because they all want to play. From the time they were old enough to walk, they want to play the game. To take the game away from them is a huge disciplinary thing. And I know people say, well, what's one game? What's half a game check? Well, it's one game and it's half a game check to a guy who lives his life to play the game. So I think it was appropriate to take away. I don't know about 2 games. I haven't sorted out if he should play this weekend again in my mind. I'm thinking maybe...
I think they've handled it. I think let them play.
Maybe
they've handled it.
Well, let's move on to the game, I think. Because I think I'm so looking forward to Saturday. This is I've been waking all week for Saturday night. If I can steal Carrie Underwood's thunder a little bit.
Well, it's like a home playoff game. It's like a virtual home playoff game. Yeah. You win and you've got a home playoff game. So it's got that feel to it. Remember the end of the 2009 season where the Riders had to play Calgary to determine first place, and that ultimately led them to playing Calgary again. Yeah. It's like that bonus game at the end of the regular season. That has that playoff feel.
And then a bye week. And no matter, and really, problem is, well, you've looked at the playoffs. They can drop. They can still drop. I don't think they can go east.
They can go 1, 2, or 3.
1, 2, or 3. They can't go east. So they still 1, 2, 3. What an amazing situation. And as I said earlier, the Lions are playing well. This is a swan song that may go down for the ages. If Wally Bono can go out as a winning head coach in his last year, and the guy's done so well in so many things that it's going to be like in BC, their defense.
Didn't that happen in 2011?
That's true too, eh? Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, he did. Sorry. Yeah.
It's like Frank Sinatra with the retirements.
Yeah. But BC's defense is playing very, very well. Travis Lulay, as I said, that third quarter was just amazing, and they're the team. Jamie Nye from CJME mentioned a few weeks back, watch out for BC, and I'm becoming more and more part of Jamie Nye's thinking on watch out for BC, because BC's scoring compared to what the Riders are doing. I know the Riders were saying accolades for Zach and all those guys, but they still didn't score a touchdown.
Well, they got 2 touchdowns offensively.
They didn't score. Yeah,
and the one to Patrick Lavoie, who's great.
Who's great.
I think he's one of my favorite Rider players of all time already. What a great player.
What a great player.
Does so many things.
What a great trade. Like, I'm thinking people talking about when is a great trade. I can't remember a trade having an impact on the season. Like Philip Blake too is a big trade too. Yeah. They needed that, and they got those 2 guys, and they gave up nothing.
Yeah.
So
great. A second rounder in 2020.
Yeah, and Josh Stanford.
And then Darius Bladek goes down.
Yeah.
So the timing of it was a good trade even before Bladek got hurt.
Can I ask you this question? And I hope you put it in the right context, but where does Brendan Labatt rank amongst Riders' offensive linemen? There's been some great ones. We're thinking Roger Aldag, Jeremy O'Day, Vic, Gino.
Ted Ernest, Jack Abenchan, Al Benisic. There's a lot of Hall of Famers in there.
But where does Brendan Labatt? Brendan Labatt's, I'm thinking, is almost near the top of the list now because of his versatility, his leadership, the way he plays the game, everything he does. I'm just wondering if we're getting an opportunity to see maybe the best.
I think we're talking about a Hall of Famer here.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, there's four riders who have been named the most outstanding offensive lineman in the league, and he's one of them. Andrew Green,
Andrew Green,
Roger Aldag, Gene Mikowski. So that automatically puts him on a pedestal. There's been a lot of fine offensive linemen in the history of this franchise, so it's tough to pick out who's better. If you look at Aldag, if you look at Mikowski, if you look at Brendan Labatt, one of the common denominators is they're all from Saskatchewan.
Well, I think
Scott Flory, just got into the Hall of Fame, and there's another offensive lineman from Saskatchewan, from Regina.
I'm throwing out what he did on Saturday.
He had a leader,
Philip Blake, and he had Josiah St. John, two guys that are new to the offensive line, and he's playing center, and he's calling all the plays, and he's watching what they're doing, because we talked to him I'm thinking, holy, what more can this one guy do for this team? Like we talk about Adam's pick, and that was Shaq Evans had some good games too, but what a guy in the middle controlling, doing everything he can, and he plays injured, and he plays all the time. So
Gene Mikowski used to do it. Gene Mikowski,
he played all over.
He played all over due to injuries or whatever. I mean, whatever they needed to put him, and he was good at every position. And
he's so good to talk to. And I'll let people know about this other thing. We talked to Brendan after losses because he's so eloquent and so smart. So I always go up to him after wins, and I say, Brendan, I always ask you for something after a loss. Let's talk about after a win. And he always appreciates that. He says, that's appreciate. That's because it's, I hate to admit it, so you take it behind the door of journalists, but we have our go-to guys who we know are going to provide some insights into things.
I remember once upon a time Regina Pats had a goalie named Mike Risdale, and he had a couple of good years. And then in 91-92, the Pats struggled down the stretch and ended up just missing the playoffs. And in a game where they had to defeat Brandon to sustain their playoff hopes, they struggled, lost, and Mike Risdale had another bad game. And every time I went and sat next to him in the dressing room, he would answer my questions. Oftentimes it'd be 20 minutes after the game and he'd still have his equipment on, and he would answer every question. He was an amazing person. The next year, Mike Risdale back as a 20-year-old, the Pats got hot in the playoffs, got to the conference final against Swift Current. And one of the major reasons they got as far as they did was Mike Risdale. And I kept that in mind, the same thing that you keep in mind with Brendan Labatt. Any chance you get to talk to Mike Risdale or Brendan Labatt after victory, you do it because they've stood there. They've taken the tough questions. They've talked to you when that's probably the last thing on earth they want to do. But they realize it's an obligation. And it's part of the gig, and they accept it. They don't have to like it, but they accept it, and they do it, and it's done. And the kind of credibility that Brendan Labatt exhibits doing everything, I think is every bit as laudable as anything he does on the field.
Another what I'm going to say is Stephen McAdoo gets a lot of criticism for the offense is done, but I'll give him credit. We've talked to him 3 or 4 times this year, and he stood up and answered the questions. Are they the best questions? No, we can argue about that. But he said the last one I talked to him last week, he goes, I'm only here because I won't get fined. I don't know if he was joking, but we kind of, and then he proceeded to provide some insights in the way the offense is. And it's always when the offense is doing not too well. Yeah. Mind you, there was a story we did earlier when they got off to a hot start, where we kind of talked to him a little bit, but another guy that can stand up there too. And I know people are very critical of him, and rightfully so. It is a kind of boring, conservative, vanilla offense, but at least sometimes Steve McAdoo will let you inside there to kind of let you know what he's thinking.
Well, a year ago, there wasn't much talk about Stephen McAdoo. People rarely mentioned his name. Guess why? They threw 35 touchdown passes and they led the league. It was the same system. It was the same offensive coordinator. But what has changed since 2017? The quarterbacks have changed. They had 3 1,000-yard receivers who are no longer there. So I'm not sure. I think what it tells me, it's not so much the system. The system has worked in Edmonton where they won a Grey Cup. It worked in 2017 here. It hasn't been working for the most part this season. What's the difference? Stephen McAdoo is a common denominator, but there's also a lot of success attached to his name. So why isn't it working now? I think there's a lot of evidence to suggest it isn't the coach. There's a lot of evidence to suggest that it's the players.
It's the talent. It's the talent of the players. I'm going to take us into another session here a little bit. Riders going on the bye week after this. They could have. What do you think of that? What do you think of going on a bye? I love it. I don't.
Now, if they get first place,
they're off for 2 weeks. But I jokingly asked Chris Jones one day, "You ever heard of a team getting clinking first place and having a couple weeks off and doing well after that?" And he looked at me and says, yeah, remember 15? Because that's what Edmonton did. They finished first. But I don't think anybody ever criticizes rest at any point of the season.
This
rest
time of
versus
year
rest. They need they played, I think, is it 11 weeks? I think 11 or 12.
They had 2 bye weeks in the summer, and I think it was 11 after that.
Those summer bye weeks. Let me just have a second. Okay.
Birds are chirping.
Birds are chirping. Golf courses are beckoning.
You can still get around in.
I could.
But you're here doing this podcast.
I'm here on my day. Yeah.
Part. This is your servitude. We do appreciate it.
So there's a bye week, and then they could have another week, or they could. So I kind of like the bye week. I think it's someone's got to get it. Someone has to have it, and then teams. But Chris Jones, there's anybody, because he's got the same staff that managed to go through that bye week and then the bye in the playoffs to win a Grey Cup. So they must know what they're doing.
And this time of year, you're playing. You've had an entire year and a stretch of 11 straight weeks with a game with injuries to accumulate. Even if players are playing, they probably aren't doing that well physically. It's just a grind. So would you rather have another week to recuperate when the alternative is playing on a cold day in November? Yeah. Any extra week you can get for Naaman Roosevelt is huge. I mean, he'll play as soon as the playoffs start, I imagine, but to have a benefit of another week before he plays, that would be immensely beneficial for the Rough Riders.
Also, it's interesting.
Marcus Thigpen looked a week ago like he was just a tired football player. So
maybe
it's another week for an older guy.
We question that a little bit about Chris resting these veterans and thinking, what's the point? But boy, maybe Joe Van Johnson will come in with fresh legs, and Cameron Marshall shows that he's still a pretty darn good running back. Arguably, maybe the best on the roster. I still think I don't
remember him running that well last year.
Oh, he did run. I don't
remember him being quite that punishing last year.
He was that way. I do remember that. I've always kind of admired the way he plays, and I love the way he blocks. He blocks at guys, and I've always found that way. And what a great pair of legs. Mason and Thigpen have both kind of had their moments, but boy, I think if Cameron Marshall's healthy now, and even last year,
that's a good November style running back. Isn't
it? I think last year he wasn't that healthy, and then he got kind of bumped out because what's his name, Richardson, and who was it? Thigpen kind of took over. I think there's a motivated Cameron Marshall who's looking to lay down the law and maybe
martial law.
Martial law, how's that? So I think maybe that's a good sign. And hey, we got a whole week of happy thoughts. Hopefully nobody does anything too stupid that comes up.
That includes us.
In the courts, yeah. And then big game on a Saturday night. I hope it's going to be warm and cozy for us in the press box. I send warm thoughts to the fans out in the stands on that day.
You look at Cameron Marshall, and on the 2nd and 16 pass to Jordan Williams-Lambert on the final possession, that was a massive play. Cameron Marshall took care of a blitzer.
I remember that
Wolf
play.
blitzer. That was the key block.
I was trying to think of that play.
And that gave Zach Collaros, Schlemazel, Austin Pfeffer Incorporated. Remember Laverne and Shirley? Yeah. That gave Zach Collaros time to throw the ball. They were facing 6-man pressure, and Cameron Marshall picked up that 6-man
coming off the end.
Yeah, just right around and he just neutralized him. You look at the difference the week before, when Adam Bighill was coming around the corner and Trey Mason wanted no part of that whatsoever. So there's a difference right there, having Cameron Marshall. There's no stat for that, except for a 21-yard reception by Jordan Williams-Lambert that pretty much won them the game.
I know we're going over here a little bit.
We've only got 45 minutes left.
Jordan Williams is having a season too, eh? Like, what a guy. There's a guy who bounces back from an injury, has something to prove. He's making catches. And I always find they call him hands catchers. And I always want to say, what does he catch with his feet? But
remember BK Williams?
Yeah, I know. You tell me that one too, because he catches
always with his gut.
So, and I asked Jones about that, and he talked about, he compared him to Nick Lewis and guys like that who catch their hands. And
Ray Algard would always
and it gives you, I think it gives you sort of room to make errors too, and you can do that. And he's such a big, strong, leggy. He's some guy on the plane asked me, "Who's your rookie of the year?" And I said, "No doubt in my mind." Doubt. And he made Unfortunately, there's a 12-year-old kicker, so I like that line in Ottawa right now. He's going to be the outstanding rookie of the year. Doesn't matter what happens to anybody else, but Jordan Williams is going to probably throw. I think out of the West, he's probably going to be in the running.
He's got to be.
It's a leading rookie receiver.
He had 51 yards after the catch.
Oh, I know.
That catch that he made when they began the drive on the 6-yard line wasn't so much the catch, but he broke 2 tackles to get 25 yards when they're beginning at their final possession on their 6.
Yeah, and he's
what a tremendous player. That's the guy who's going to get 1,000 yards year after year.
And you come in there and you meet him in the locker room, he's just so darn happy. And I hate this all the time. He's happy to talk to us, happy to talk football. And I know interactions are important in our job. It's kind of nice to be going there and have a conversation with a guy like 2 human beings and not as a reporter and an athlete. It's kind of nice change every now and again. We like to see that kind of stuff. Rob, do they have to change anything? We'll wrap it up. Do they have to change anything for BC? What do they got to do, buddy?
Well,
you be the coach.
There's so much of what they did this past week has to be continued, and that's the only real lingering question is, okay, there was such a change in performance from one week to the next when you look at the Winnipeg game as opposed to the Calgary game. How do you guard against the pendulum swinging again?
I know.
That's the interesting one. There's Charleston Hughes is going to be one of the issues this week. I see no reason not to play him. He's served his punishment. But BC is going to be a interesting opponent. They haven't seen BC since the summer, and that's a different team that they're playing.
They're 6-1 since then, I think 6 or 7. Sorry,
but they're only 2-6 on the road.
I know
that's where they can be had.
Yeah, but the two teams of the Riders. We talk about two teams in different. The Riders are also, since they played BC, they were in a row because they beat Calgary before that game. But since they played BC, they've only lost a couple of games. So you have two teams that are rolling, that are playing well. Well, but BC's been a little more consistent, I think. They haven't had the ups and downs. They haven't had the Winnipeg game. Mind you, they've had some pretty bad road games. You asked me
to play coach a little bit. I'm surprised that a team that emphasizes the run as much as this team doesn't do more play action.
Yeah.
You know, they went largely with a 5-man front. Sometimes they augmented it with a 6, that usually big Patrick Lavoie. But they lined up with 5 guys on the front most of the time. What if they were line up with 2 tight ends and give Zach Collaros even more protection and throw a bit more play action into that?
Yeah.
I think that could be a real weapon. Maybe it's something they're saving because you look at some of the other teams and how often they use play action, how effective Winnipeg uses play action with Andrew Harris. That's what set up the Darvin Adams touchdown in Winnipeg the game before last. So Riders don't use that much. If their running game continues to be a threat like it has been, maybe that's something that they can use effectively. That's my coaching 101 seminar today, and I'm totally qualified to say that.
What does it say about the CFL, the way the playoffs are? Does it say there's such parity that they can't decide everything over an 18-game season? They may have to go over it.
You can make a good case for 5 or 6 teams to win a Grey Cup. What if Hamilton was healthy?
Oh, yeah.
They've lost Brandon Banks now.
That was a big...
already lost Terrence Tolliver, having already lost Jalen Saunders. Yeah. What if Hamilton had
what if Calgary was healthy?
Receivers? Yeah.
You know, you look at their receivers.
Darrell Walker in Edmonton.
Yeah. There's always been
What if Winnipeg had Weston Dressler all year?
Yeah.
You know.
So is it good to be this tight? Or do you think?
It's fun. This is so much fun. It's especially when you and I covered the 2014 Riders when the second half of the season after Darian got hurt, forget it. 2015 they were 0-9. 2016 they started off 1-10. So last year was a lot of fun. I found a great pizza slice place in Ottawa. This is going to be a lot of fun wherever the path takes us, and most specifically you. I think that's going to be an interesting, compelling next month. I'm really pumped about it. And you need some excitement in your football life when you're a Denver Broncos fan right now.
Yeah, the Steelers had the bye week, so I didn't need anything. But the Steelers are coming back, and we're looking tough. Le'Veon Bell, whatever happens to him, I don't care about him anymore. Some guy asked me, he said, "Did you cheer for the Steelers?" I asked me which team I cheered for. I said, "Yeah." He says, "How come you don't brag about it like Rob?" Because we're good. We're always good.
How many Super Bowls the Steelers won?
I think never more than Denver.
Denver's been in more of them. Anyway,
hang on. Can I read it, or do you want to?
You've got to read this. This is
right
from the top.
Do you want to read it in my breathless Mary Monroe voice? No, I'll just read it in Murray voice. Please rate us on iTunes and leave a review. It helps us grow the podcast. Or podcast. What do you think? Podcast? Collaros and Edom. No, Edom. Collaros,
Edom, Bladek, Jovan Johnson,
Dariush. It's a whole world. Someone's asked me grammar today. I keep saying about practice, which is a word that doesn't.
Well, judging by this podcast, we need more practice. I think that's a C. For Murray McCormick, I'm Rob Vanstone, unfortunately, and thanks for being with us. We'll do this again next week. Take care.